You're listening to 94.4 FM, Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show. Your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, bringing you news from the local area and around the world. Very fortunate in this show to interview some of the world's best athletes, sports people, coaches, footballers, you name it. The goal of the show is to increase awareness and participation in sport. We also have a segment featuring some of the world's most influential people in field of psychology and related fields who give us insights into their work and research, amongst other things. Today we have a very special guest who's been on the show before, who's going to give us an insight into how things are going at the football club that she is the manager of. So it'll be really fascinating insight into how things are developing. Last time we interviewed our guest, got really interesting insight into the world of women's football. We want to keep the momentum going and sort of make sure it sort of keeps growing. So it's Lois Daniels, the manager of the Barnsley Women's Football Club. Welcome to the show. Great to have you on board again, Lois.
Thanks, Jim. Really nice to be on again. It's
always great to speak to you, Lois. And we spoke last time. There was a lot of developments at Barnsley Women's Football Club. No, that's been a bit of a whirlwind season thus far for you. But let's sort of start with, as we sort of draw to the close of 2022, what would you say, what would the report card suggest? How are things gone for the club, do you think, thus far?
I think that people from the outside probably judge success on results and where we are in the table and where we were this time last year, which from an outsider looking in, things are going really well. But from an insider, I kind of try to judge success on the mood of the camp and how much we're putting them little building blocks and the foundations in place, because I think that gives us longevity, and it gives us success for long term rather than just the short term and the here and now. So
absolutely,
what I the insider is that it's going from strength to strength. We've had a period of 4 to 5 months of this season where I don't think anyone would have envisaged where we were in the table now. But you can tell by the environment, the culture and everything that the girls put in week in, week out, why we are where we are. It's no surprise, and I think we're in a really good place at the minute.
Fantastic. And I mean, I suppose you could sort of make a point that it's really important for any club to have a good sort of youth system, players coming through, getting local players in the team. I know you're a big advocate of giving young players a chance to experience first team football where possible. It's not easy, obviously, that's for sure, I would imagine. But what about the ETC? How's that going, Lois? What's sort of developing on that side of the club?
Yeah, so this year we were lucky enough to confirm our ETC status, which was a huge thing for the club and something I'm a real massive advocate of, as you know. And I think you start from bottom up if you want long-term success, in my opinion. So that's on its way now, and it's starting on the 3rd of Jan, which is brilliant.
Fantastic.
And we've got 70 girls that are enrolled onto that programme, which is within an hour of the training location, and all local girls, and hopefully the futures of our first team.
That's amazing. And what do you think it would mean to the sort of people of Barnsley to see maybe someone come through into the first team from the ETC?
Well, it's happened before with our age groups. You've got like MP now and Ruby Jex now, who are both playing for the first team and who have come through age groups and played for the groups lower than at the first team. I think in terms of the ETC, that's why we're doing it. That's the whole aim and that's the whole focus. And that's not to say all 70 girls will play for the first team, but what it is to say is that there's a pathway there and all the help, support and facilities there to try to ensure success, whether that be with us or other teams locally.
Absolutely, or maybe even sort of the potential there, the pathway to who knows where it can go. I mean, obviously in the future, I know these things take time and sort of patience, but you never know. Obviously, there's always a chance maybe in the future a player could break through and maybe go, like you says, or even into. I know obviously the goal is to bring Barnsley into the highest league possible, but obviously there's an opportunity for a player to go on to international level. Do you think there's a possibility in the future, 5-10 years, Lois, to maybe a young girl from Barnsley come through the ranks and maybe represent England or go all the way?
So, and I know it's happened in the past, and there's no reason why it shouldn't happen again. And I think, to be fair, that's none of the good work that just Barnsley are doing. It's the FA in general are pumping a lot of money and resource into women's football and the roots of women's football to make sure that the longevity and the sustainability of the pathway is certainly there for 5-10 years to come, like you said.
Absolutely, and these things do take time and sort of patience and so on and so forth. But I suppose if the training's there, the opportunity's there, then who knows, where the road can take a player. And I mean, you mentioned the mood of the camp, and can you tell us a bit about the mood of the camp, Lois? I mean, you sort of, I know I can imagine management is not easy. Obviously, everyone wants to play, only 11 can play, but how do you feel? What's the mood in general of this sort of camp at the moment?
Well, I think we'd be lying if we said it's plain sailing management, because it's definitely not. And something we've aimed to do is to have a really competitive squad, because it's something we've not had in previous years. And I think it's important to add to the culture as well. And the biggest thing I credit my girls on week in, week out is their togetherness and how tight-knit they are as a squad and as a team, and they really do want what's best for the team. And that shows week in, week out. And I think whether the competition be anywhere on the pitch or with individuals who are potentially best friends or whatever it might be, we had an agreement at the start of the season that we all understand why that competition's important and that competition's healthy. And I can honestly say, hand on heart, that we've got no players in our squad or in our team that shouldn't be where they are. They're absolutely so deserving of being where they are. And I think we're really seeing that in the terms of the quality of training, the quality of performances, and of course where we are in the league table as well. And I think a big thing for us this year has been seeing that, nurturing that young talent and seeing it really come through and shine through, and as well as adding a couple of experienced players, which is always important. The young players have really took centre stage this year, and they've been phenomenal for us. Honestly, I don't think there's one player I could pick out in the squad to say they've not been up to standard, because genuinely every player we've got on our books right now is top class, and I think they've got a really long-term future with the club.
Absolutely, it's that understanding that it's a squad game, to do well in football, in sport in general. It's a squad game, and it's really important. Everyone sort of sings from the same hymn sheet and appreciates that. Obviously, that it is a squad game, and that's sort of key to getting that balance, that's for sure. In terms of the experience at Newcastle, what an experience that was for the players to play in and around 30,000 people. I mean, that was obviously an amazing experience to sort of go up to the Vitality FA Cup and against Newcastle. Talk us through that experience, Lois. What did you think the sort of players gained from that, and the whole experience of playing in front of 30,000 people or so at St James's?
Yeah, I think the whole weekend as well, and I've spoke about this quite openly on that weekend and beyond it, is what we tried to do as a club was make our players feel like professionals for the weekend. And we can have elements of professionalism everywhere we can, and I feel like at our level we have it in abundance, but the people that we've got connected to the club and our resources allowed us for that one weekend to be like pros really, and stay over the night before and travel down, and from everything to nutrition to pre-match, post-match, everything that we did was a real eye-opener for some of the girls, and they really enjoyed it. And that's not to say what we usually do isn't professional at all, it's just a life of a full-time pro, I suppose. And the actual day at St James's Park was unbelievable. It was absolutely one to remember, and all the girls enjoyed it, and that goes back to the togetherness that I was saying before about even the players that potentially weren't in the squad or were on the bench or come on as a sub enjoyed the day just as much as the person next to them, and we're cheering the teammates on. And what a phenomenal day, not just for all the girls but for everyone connected to the club as well. We spoke to our sponsors and our fans and our families after the game, and we could see the top corner of all the Barnsley red and white scarves, which was really nice, and I know quite a lot of the girls got emotional around that. But I go back to it, Jim, what a club Newcastle are for doing what they're doing for women's football, really putting it on the map and doing everything they're doing, not just for their club but for women's football. And that was an occasion we shared. Newcastle come out on top and they won the game, but I think we'll remember that playing each other forever, because that was a memory to be shared, I think, and one that'll go in history.
Absolutely, and I think definitely the sort of biggest winner there is obviously women's football, to have that opportunity to play. And I mean, you'd be hard pushed to get. I don't like to make comparisons between the men and women's game, but you'd be hard pressed to get the third or fourth tier of a men's of the league to get 30,000, but to get that in the women's game that's growing at the moment exponentially by the day, really is amazing. Really, to get nearly 30,000 come along, and I suppose they were treated as some good football too. The standard of football, I think, for sure. If people aren't familiar with it, then do get down. And anyone sort of listening and thinking, okay, well, they're considering coming to watch Barnsley women. Can you give us a bit of an insight in terms of the football itself? I mean, I said honestly and openly last that I'm surprised in a good way at how far the game has come in the UK, and the standard seems to be improving all the time. But generally speaking, for anyone sort of considering this coming down, what's the whole experience going to be like? Not just the football, but also if they come down to watch Barnsley play. It seems like a communal club, a family type club type thing. But what would they experience if they come down to watch? Because we want to see some of the people who went to go watch the FA Cup game come along every week and get behind the team. What would the experience be like for them?
Yeah, I think, like you say, Jim, I'd advise anybody and everybody to get down, especially those with young girls who are aspiring to be footballers. That's our dream, that's what we're here to do, and we want to be role models to them young girls. But I think in terms of us at fourth tier, it can be hit and miss what kind of surface you're playing on or what pitch you're playing on in terms. So what we try to do is we try to play as attractive football as possible. And I always say at the end of the day, the girls won't be here, and we won't attract the girls that we do if they didn't like the football that we play. And sometimes you've got clever in how you're playing. You can't always play fancy playing out from the back style football, and I think that's just about being clever with it, and the girls we've got on board certainly understand that. But we're competitive, we want to be aggressive without the ball, and we want to win the ball back as quickly as we can, and then with the ball we want to try to hurt the opponent where we can, and whether that be playing attractive football or whether it be playing more direct and into areas, then that's what we do sometimes as well.
Absolutely, and I think that's really sort of important point to get across for our listeners. And I think the other thing as well, I mean, we spoke last time about the sort of vision to sort of move the club as a whole forward and put the club on the map. In terms of the UK and all over, really is a massive opportunity here to sort of grow and go forward. But obviously, first team football is a results business too, and the results have been coming along, and the club is sort of doing well, and they're up there. But equally, in saying that, Lois, there are clubs in and around that sort of top 3 or 4 that you could argue are and have got a lot of resources themselves, really. I mean, what are your sort of thoughts in terms of you sort of alluded to the league table there and sort of results. Do you sort of run your own race, or do you kind of pay attention to what's going on around you? I mean, you've got obviously Newcastle, you've got Durham, you've got clubs there that have got resources in their own way. Leeds, Middlesbrough, you've got a lot of clubs there. What do you sort of think when you sort of think, okay, week by week, you take it one game at a time? Do you kind of sort of look at the table and sort of have an idea of who you're playing against and sort of where you might be able to sort of finish in the table without sort of giving too much away, obviously, to anyone listening in?
Yeah, exactly that, Jim. To be fair, we take it week by week, and we know who we're facing that week, and we try to set up accordingly for that. But I think in terms of the table, and I'm speaking honestly saying this, I think maybe what's been missing in the past with our team is that culture and that togetherness and that environment. And it's about, you want the results and you want the goal orientated kind of business, but you're not going to achieve that without doing the small and the baby steps and the foundation. So I think that's what we've done over the past 12-18 months, and thankfully now we're starting to show the rewards of it, and by no stretch of the imagination with a finished article, and we're going beyond what's expected, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinions. And we know that Newcastle are favourites to win the league. They should be. They're full time, and they've got triple the amount of resource anybody else has got, so there's no pressure on my group. We take games week by week. If we win, it's a bonus, and we're a driven group. We want to win everything we can, but we also know where we're at, and we understand the building blocks to get where we want to be.
Absolutely. In a sense, sort of the pressure's off the players. They can go out there. I think what you do really well, Lois, you take the pressure off the players, and it frees them up to sort of go out there and play the game, and sort of go out there and give it a good go, and obviously I think it's fair to say that sort of Newcastle with all their resources are favourites. So I can imagine that for there there'd be a certain amount of pressure on them. Obviously they've made their sort of plans from what I can see in terms of what they want to achieve as a club and do, and I think that obviously that puts a bit of extra pressure on them, and it kind of sort of in one sense kind of frees you up. But in saying that, I suppose the other point is that there are other good teams there as well, and one thing that's sort of like from the outside looking in that's sort of been evident for me is there are teams that I think it's one of them sort of leagues, Lois, that anyone can beat anyone on day. It wouldn't surprise me if the team at the bottom of the league at the moment beats the team at the top of the league. It's that sort of league from what I can see that on the day who knows what can happen, and it's just a question of putting a good run of matches, and who knows where you'll end up. Is that fair to say, or in terms of is that the sort of from that perspective, is that sort of a fair view of it, Lois, or maybe I've got it completely wrong?
Yeah, 100%. We speak about this all the time. We call it unpredictable league because it really is, and I think the vast majority of the teams within the league are the same level in terms of facility, finance, and backing. And then there's a couple who go beyond that, and a couple who fall beneath that. But in general, everyone's very much on a level peg. So it is a really unpredictable league. But in all honesty, that's my favourite thing about it, because you look at other leagues at the same tier as us, and being honest, it's nowhere near as competitive. And I think what really drives us forward week in, week out is knowing that we can beat any game, but we can also win any game. So that's what's important to take into every game, and just it allows you to have a clean slate before every game as well, and be really focused for every game, and
absolutely,
every game's on final.
Yeah, no, it's that predictably unpredictable, so to speak, and I suppose in saying that, what I find really interesting in terms of like the pre-season, I know you can only ride so much into pre-season friendlies, but I believe obviously there was a result against Burnley, was it 5? I mean, obviously I'm sure there's different players and personnel than there was, but it's still a barometer, isn't it, really, where you gave teams at a higher level a good game in pre-season. That kind of put a marker out there. Do you feel that was a good way of putting some marker out there in pre-season? It was a good idea that Barnsley would be competitive this year and give it a good go?
Yeah, I mean, I said this to the girls, and I keep alluding to it, but I wouldn't have had the people in this squad if I didn't believe in them. They can absolutely achieve everything we want to achieve and more, and I think when we played Burnley and Huddersfield and Feds in pre-season, it was a real good indicator of where we want to be and how well we want to do, not this year but beyond as well. And
absolutely,
we beat Burnley to Huddersfield, and we got beat off Feds by 1 goal, and it's pre-season and everybody's trying new things, so you can't really look too much into the result, but the performance, we took a lot away from in all 3 of those games. Yeah,
and I suppose you could argue no one sort of goes out to get beat, and obviously, as much as the old cliches, any sort of friendly games in football, obviously everyone's setting their team, but there is some validity, that's for sure. But I think what was interesting too, I mean, at the point of this sort of conversation, there may be more games played. This is pre-record, but I did notice, obviously, and I know obviously it's probably not in the scope of our conversation, that Newcastle did get beaten pretty heavily by Wolves, and and that's pretty interesting, really, in the sense that it goes to show that there's a fine line between succeeding, getting results in this league, and the league above. On any given day. So I think you mentioned there preparation is sort of key, and sort of going forward now, obviously we start moving towards a Christmas break, and this will probably air during the Christmas break, the show. Is there anything that sort of you think throughout the Christmas break? I mean, a chance for the team to have some R&R and have a break away from the game, but then obviously come back and hit the ground running and sort of what without giving too much away to anybody else. What are your sort of thoughts about the break? Has it sort of come early with Barnsley being on a good run, or do you feel that ready for a break type thing and we go again?
Yeah, I mean, you always enjoy having a good run of form, but I think, a good run of form can be broken just as much as it can be continued, so it hasn't come at a bad time at all. I think my girls will go away and enjoy a nice break away from football, probably not from each other, because they'll definitely be seeing each other, but they'll enjoy a nice break from football, and we'll certainly be meeting up and making sure that we keep in contact, but then they'll come back and they'll hopefully be ready to start again, and they will have kept on top of the fitness, I'm saying, with my fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
They're a great group. They'll go away, they'll look after themselves, but they'll also refresh themselves as well, and they know that when we come in, we've got a lot of games coming up in January and February that we want to really hit the ground running with. Fantastic.
And sort of weather permitting, that first game back at home, I've kind of put you on the spot there. I know obviously the fixture list could change. Do you know what the first game is going to be back, Lois? Like the first home game that the team will play, or maybe that they can check the website? And
we've got Leeds away first home game, which is on the 8th of Jan. But like you say, Leeds have got a really good pitch, to be fair, so it should be on, but it is weather permitting, and it's also cup competition permitting as well, so we've had a few fixtures that have been cancelled and rearranged. So, just check the league and just double check, but it should 9 times out of 10 be Leeds. And
so the actual Facebook page, the Barnsley Women's Facebook page, if you just want to give a shout out to the listeners in terms of they can just get on there and basically, is it Barnsley Women FC Facebook page, something along those lines?
Yeah, that one,
Yeah, I'm sure if they Google, that's brilliant. Now, thanks for your time, Lois. It's been very kind of you to join us and really interesting, and all to Barnsley Women FC success, and also, generally speaking, it's great to see the game progress as it is doing, and obviously you're playing a huge part in doing so, not just the Barnsley one. I think anyone sort of watching from any perspective, that some of those games that going to inspire anyone to get involved in the game, that's for sure. That was Lois Daniels, very kind of her to join us, the Barnsley Women FC manager, on the Friday Sports Show, 94.4 FM, the Salford City Radio. Your host, Jimmy Petruzzi.